Welcome to Channel X TV. Here in Rakuten's offices, I'm delighted to be joined by Koki today. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thanks for having me. It's an amazing time.
For those that don't know you, Koki, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm at Rakuten, Senior Business Development Manager, and I work for Rakuten Ichiba Marketplace, which is one of the biggest in Japan. And we are expanding our marketplace for clients in Europe, and I'm heading around.
Yeah, so let's talk about Japan first of all. Tell us about the Japanese market and the opportunity for UK and European retailers.
Sure. So obviously GDP-wise, it's one of the biggest economies in the world. I think third, fourth, I think now fourth. Yeah. And e-commerce speaking, it's the fourth largest economy in the world, right after UK. And it's one that always been, but it's one of the pivotal places to talk about strategically when you talk about going to market in Asia. So that's where we are. And yeah, one of the good places to think about if you want to think about the APAC regions, I think.
And what do Japanese consumers look for? Because I think of so many of the products that I buy myself. I mean, we're recording this on my Samsung device. So many products come from the Far East. What's the sort of Japanese appetite for UK and European products?
Great question. So I think a few things. One is sort of the cultural aspects of what the European or British brands can bring to. So Japanese people tend to be quite known to be like sort of a trust is important when they think about buying product or buying something or even experiencing something. They're always looking for something to experience, not just the product itself. So that's one thing.
So they're not buying the product, they really are buying the brand experience.
They really buy the brand experience. So that's one thing. And then another thing for sure is, they're also thinking about the functionality. So it's not, it's not about the pricing. Pricing is something always anywhere. But on top of it, they need to think, so if I buy this, what am I going to do with it? So anything that have those uniqueness into it, I think that's something Japanese people would think about.
And obviously, if someone's buying in Japan and they're buying from the UK or Europe, there's going to be costs associated, like shipping and everything. So what is their disposable income like? Is it similar to the UK? Do they have a greater appetite for spending on products from overseas?
Right. I think they have a good appetite to spend on product overseas, especially something not available there. If we talk about e-commerce in particular, income speaking, right, in Japan, it's one of those a little bit of stagnated economy in the world. I think
the whole world is.
Whole world is, and I think in Japan especially, and the pricing, inflation is not as crazy as the European side, which is a good thing for Japanese people. But at the same time, the income never goes up either. So a bit conservative on passive, but more conservative part is yen is very cheap now, so it's really hard to go out. And on top of it, then they have everyday life, and Japan is known to be very long hour work people, not much of life work balance. So they really like to experience something out of it, and which they are not have it there.
So it's not the type of market where you just put up a product and people buy it. They really want to buy into the culture and the experience of the brand, and it's a lot more than just the actual item itself.
Absolutely. I think from our marketplace speaking as well, we see a lot of better or successful results when you put it on it and then act on it. If you just put it on it, nothing gonna happen.
So talk to us about the kind of the Japanese buying experience. I'm a Japanese worker, middle income for Japan. I'm on Rakuten Ichiba. I find a product. What am I expecting the brand or the retailer to give me over and above the product? Is it live demos, or is it a brand story? What are they expecting from the shopping experience?
So I think definitely it's a journey to eliminate the reason not to buy it. So it's kind of similar to what the European folks have to do for European markets. But definitely, sort of experiencing, showing the experience or demo or like a video is something you can put in there. But definitely to put, context of the brand or the product, of the background of the products, so what they want to do or how you want to have it in your life. So to show it is very important. And in Rakuten, we see a more better conversion when you have more of those details. So Rakuten's pages tend to get long because you want to put, like, similar to if you know like Apple's product page, for example.
It's massive.
Yeah. But Rakuten, we see a similar thing as well. Not that doesn't mean like you need to put like long text, because nobody likes reading text always, but putting a nice image and then put the nice, the showcase of what's going to be like.
Showing the product, but also showing the product with someone using
it. Exactly. Depends on the situation, depends on the target, how you brand it, how you position your target how you position your brand to the target. Then you can bring those imageries that resonates with the people.
So I know there's a lot of similarities between Japan and the UK in particular. I mean, we buy their cars all the time. When they finish with their car, they send it to us, and we're really happy with it because we drive the same side of the road. But what type of product categories are Japanese consumers looking for? Is it the same as the UK, which is kind of fashion, beauty, home and garden, or are there different categories that they shop in?
Yeah, thanks. So fashion, beauty, home and garden also something with Rakuten is really strong. So we see a lot of demand out there. But on top of it, especially for overseas sellers onto our platform, we see a lot of appetite on things like health stuff. For example, like supplements or protein or something. Skincare, those kind of things, or things like fix your programs type of products, really popular.
So I want to turn a little bit to talk about the Rakuten Ichiba platform, and I know a lot of people, especially in the UK, are very familiar with Rakuten because you bought Play.com, and in France you bought Price Minister. Right. But those platforms have kind of disappeared a bit, and mostly what people watching will have heard about in recent years is Rakuten advertising.
Right.
So can you tell me about the Rakuten Ichiba marketplace opportunity and what the offer is for UK and European retailers?
Right, sounds good. So first of all, Rakuten, group is, have 70 different services, I think, across all around the world.
Everything from marketplace to advertising to TV.
To in Japan, we have credit card, we have mobile phone, banking, so everything. Anything to do with internet, we have some kind of service in Japan or across global.
So more so than even Google in the West.
Kind of way it
really
is.
You can run your life on Rakuten.
So for example, in Japan, right, our competitors, so to say, so-called competitors, those players have really good presence in e-commerce. But if you step back and think about Rakuten as a place to put your products, put the brand visibility. It's not we are not just e-commerce. We have a visibility in banking. We have visibility everyday life, mobile phone, everywhere. So that's the kind of differentiation there. So talking about Rakuten Ichiba marketplace, that's where we started when the company started as well, and then it's always been growing as such. So marketplace is one of the main businesses that we have in Japan or across Europe as well. What the opportunity for companies in Europe is just as much as the opportunities for companies in Japan selling goods to end consumers. Our marketplace is known to be very store driven, so we don't just ask the sellers to list the products. We ask the stores to create a branch onto our marketplace, and then create the engagement, to create experience with your stores within our marketplace. So it's more similar to D2C, let's say. And what we're providing to European companies as opportunity is that they can just onboard it as a similar manner to Japanese companies from user perspective. And we basically provide the same experience for end users, localized transaction, and all the policies that are similar to what we provided to the Japanese companies as well.
So I think there's two things people are going to want to know. One is the kind of the business operational logistics of how do we even start selling to Japan. and the second is how to engage with the marketplace. So let's take logistics first.
Sure.
If I want to sell to Japan, what do I need to do? Do I have to open up a Japanese entity? Do I have to have stock in Japan? How can Rakuten help me with this?
Sure. So in the long run, of course, I think it's somewhere you need to put it and think about it. But to start up, I know it's long to think about or long resources to think about. So for Rakuten, we don't require any of those entities or establishments in Japan. You can simply have your companies in the UK contract with us, and then you can just onboard it straight to us. We just simply transfer the payout to British companies here.
And what about logistics and just the operational shipping of products to Japan?
Right. So shipping is something related to the customer experience, so we take it very important. But at the same time, we really encourage merchants to engage with the users. So we actually allow companies to just ship directly from UK to Japan, which is no problem at all. I know shipping time is something to think about, obviously, but we see a good result when you make a good engagement to the customers, saying why it's coming from UK and how long it's gonna take. And so long as you meet those expectations, we see no problem at all.
And what are the kind of the tax implications? I mean, does the consumer get a tax bill when the product's imported, or is the tax prepaid? Or
So this is where also you can set up as you wish, but there are two ways to go. So first of all, if you do cross-border, you don't have to worry about the VAT in Japan, so consumption tax, because it becomes a sort of a private import, as we call as a scheme, and customer will be have to pay those tax and duties, and those calculation occurs when at the border when they pass the customs. So at the end of the day, it's a customer's responsibilities to pay those money. But at the same time, it's experience. So two ways to do. One is you just let the customers to pay at the door, or you could ask logistic companies to set up a Namana DDP, delivery duty paid, so you get recharged later on, but you charge them up front within the pricing. One thing to know is there are certain threshold whether it's going to be duty and tax applied or not, which is around £90 or so.
So it's quite generous.
Yeah, it's quite generous. So it's 16,066 yen. So that's the rate. If it's above that, then usually it's going to be tax or duties, and then if it's lower, it'll be tax free usually. Yeah.
So that's kind of the basics of the logistics side. Let's talk about the selling side. So if I've decided that I'm going to sell in Japan on Rakuten, I'd be daft not to use Rakuten.
Yeah.
How do I go about engaging with your platform, both from linking my available inventory and creating listings, but also from the language side? Because obviously I'm guessing Japanese people are going to want adverts in Japanese for starters.
Yeah. So it's very, very important point for successful store experience for marketplace like ours, or in Japan anyways, localization, because not many people are gonna speak English. It's gonna be Japanese for sure, and you're competing basically with other Japanese companies who's basically perfect. And I want to emphasize that the trust to the platform or companies is always very, very important in Japan. So localization is really key. From our perspective, we request a person or a Japanese capabilities for European or international companies to have it when they're on board. Otherwise, it's really, really hard to operate the store anyways. When I say capabilities, it can be agencies, for example, as well. So that could be the key, especially in the startup phase. So instead of have one person, finding one person is also something with difficulties. So outsourcing it for part of it is something key, or kind of the easy step to get in for us. You establish it and you create the stores with the agencies, and then you launch it. You see how it goes. Once it scale up, then you can start to internalize it. From Rakuten perspective, so you're talking about how to market and stuff. So we have dedicated account managers once you onboard it. and launch the store. So those we call e-commerce consultant can help you sort of build up the plan, how to optimize those parts, and then how to sophisticate it, or how to tackle on conversion, for example, or how to tackle on traffic. So we sort of step back and look at the numbers, and then really provide the consultation service for them. So they kind of craft the strategy and then question how to execute those. Then agency can help you all together. So we created sort of a three-party coalition to make.
And I think the agency is probably going to be almost compulsory, because obviously Japanese listings are very different to what you've been presented on a UK marketplace. Right. Here we're interested in the product, the price, the title, the description. But I know that on Asian markets it's full of colour and banners everywhere, and it's almost shouting at me, it feels like, when I'm looking at them. Right. So you do need someone with the Japanese culture understanding to be able to fit in.
So I think localization, when I say localization, it's not just a translation. So I know AI,
you can't just use Google Translate.
Exactly. I know AI is becoming such a thing. It's becoming a thing for sure, and we are kind of start implementing some of the features in AI, using AI as well. However, when it comes to translation, word A doesn't mean word B always in Japanese. So you need to kind of think about the context in word A to craft the copywriting that works for Japanese users. So localization is really key, and it's not just about translation.
So when you're looking at the opportunity, obviously a company is going to have to be a certain scale to even want to sell to Japan, let alone make it a success. So what sort of scale companies are you looking for? And are you looking for brands, or is this an opportunity for retailers that don't own the brands as well? What type of businesses should be interested in Rakuten Ichiba?
Right, so type of business, I think we are a generalist marketplace, so we are welcoming any type. So retailers, brands, manufacturers, or resellers. We have a lot of emphasis on D2C recently, where companies or manufacturers or brand can sell directly to our end users. So that's the concept of our D2C, basically saying you don't have to have a resellers in between or retailers in between to be on board.
And we're seeing that since COVID more than ever, even in the UK.
Exactly. So that's kind of emphasis on it. But from our point of view, any type of businesses, so long as you have your own stock and you're able to ship it to Japan, then we are all welcoming them. The size of business, I think that's something key to think about, because I think my conclusion is you need to have a little bit, few years at least of good businesses going on, and then have enough, sort of comfortable enough to go to such a market like Japan, because it's far away, not definitely far away, and you do need some resource. I'm not saying you need a massive resource, but you need a bit of a resource for sure to think about it. So yeah, it's a few years of experience, a few years of successful business in UK, I think will do a lot of ideas of what to do in Japan as well.
And talking of cost and investment, what sort of investment should someone be thinking about kind of upfront to give themselves at least a better than even chance of making a success of business in Japan? Both from sort of the platform side, but also potentially agency side, etc.
Right.
Obviously, there's going to be a lot more upfront costs because you've got to put all of your products on and localize them to start with.
Right.
But what sort of budget should people be looking for, and what sort of size team does someone need?
Right. So the budget speaking, it's really hard to say, because the agency part is something we don't really know, to be honest, and we are happy to stay away that way. But altogether, I think from our side, at least, is we take about the commissions up to 10% or so. It's variable. More you sell, then it goes lower, and then some fixed fee. Altogether, I think initial phase for first year, from our point of view, is about £4,000 or so, plus those fixed commissions. And for the agency, it again really varies. But what I know is they take about a similar commission base plus fixed fee. So altogether, if you have 10K, let's say, to think about, it's a good investment, I think.
So the final thing I want to ask about is actually the people at Rakuten. And I know you're normally based in Berlin, even though you're over here in London today. And you said earlier you've got a couple of people working in London at the moment.
Yeah.
But If someone's interested, how do they get hold of Rakuten? How do they come to you? Do they go to your team? Is there a website? Is there an email address? How do people that want to find out more get hold of you?
Sure. So we do have a website for this particular Rakuten Ichiba opportunity for international companies. So you can go check it. It has all the information plus commercials as well. So you can also have a grasp of it.
And we'll get that link on the video.
Thanks. Also, if you want to talk to us, then there is obviously the contact page for that as well. You can also reach out to me directly as well. I'm happy to have initial conversation if that's interesting.
And how does someone go about finding a good agency to work with? And I know I shouldn't say good agencies because they've all got their benefits, but how do you go about selecting an agency? What should you look for?
So definitely some presence in Japan. If you can search a little bit about Rakuten, then you might be able to find some. Also, if you particularly think about Rakuten, then you can come to us first. Then we can introduce some agencies that we know, because we are sort of recognizing them as a so-called approved vendor, where they have some years of experience with Rakuten, and we trust them as well. Although we don't know the outcomes for sure, because that's really depends on how you're going to work.
Yeah.
But at least we can give you some guidelines or guide you a little bit on this journey as well.
So Rakuten Ichiba, huge opportunity in Japan, and live and kicking for UK and European merchants. Koki, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.